Hey guys, Tech Frickle here again. Today I'm going to be going over the developing websites locally section, and this looks like it takes us through some VS Code stuff and doing some local projects. So let's get started. Introduction, developing websites locally. In this unit, you'll be introduced to text editors and Chrome dev tools. The goal of this unit is to introduce you to text editors and how to develop websites on your own computer. You will also learn about Chrome DevTools, an essential tool used to analyze a web page's HTML and CSS. After this unit, you'll be able to use text editors to develop websites locally, use Chrome DevTools to inspect web pages in the browser. Learning is social, blah, blah, blah. We've read that before. Go to the forums. All right, getting started with Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is one of the most popular and powerful text editors used by software engineers today. In this article, we will go over the steps necessary to download a popular text editor called Visual Studio Code, also referred to as VS Code. By the end of this article, you will be able to start interacting with VS Code interacting with code using VS Code. Introduction. What are text editors? Text editors are called code editors. Also called code editors are applications used by developers to write code. They can highlight and format your code so that it's easier to read and understand. If you've used Codecademy, you're already familiar with a text editor. It's the area you write your code in. Using a text editor is part of creating your development environment, the set of tools that you use for working on coding projects. It will allow you to take what you've learned on Codecademy and put it into practice as you work on projects on your computer. Not only will this introduce you to the tools that are commonly used by professional developers, but it also means that you've grown as a developer and are ready to start working on your own. Great work. Specific to writing code, text editors provide a number of advantages: language-specific syntax highlighting, automatic code indentation, color schemes to suit your preferences and make code easier to read, plugins or add-on programs to catch errors in code, a tree view or visual representation of a project's folders and files so you can conveniently navigate your project, key shortcuts or combinations for faster development. You may also have read or heard about IDEs or integrated development environments. An IDE allows you not only to edit, but also compile and debug your code through one application or interface. While the text editor we can recommend isn't considered an IDE, it has many IDE-like features that make life as a developer easier without needing a lot of resources that an IDE usually requires. The best of both worlds. Choosing a text editor, there are a number of text editors to choose from. For example, Visual Studio Code is one of the most popular text editors used by developers. That's Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio, which is slightly different. We want the former, the one with code, in the name. Other popular text editors you may have heard of are Atom and Sublime Text. Any of these editors mentioned are great for development, but to make things easier, we suggest you start off with Visual Studio Code. Some of the benefits of this editor are free to use, open source, IDE-like features, supported by a large community of users in Microsoft. When you are further along in your coding career, you can try other code editors to see what features work best with your personal development workflow. Installing Visual Studio Code. So we've chosen our text editor. Now let's get ready now you just need to install it on your computer. For visual learners, I've already installed it. Installation steps. We have done all of this already, so let's go to the next section. Building projects with VS Code. Use the Visual Studio Code in your local environment and create an HTML website. Practice using Visual Studio Code to start an off-platform project. As you move through various lessons and paths here on Codecademy, you may find yourself needing to create a project on your own computer and not on the Codecademy learning environment. This can be tricky, but it's an exciting step that signals that you're ready to work independently. To do this, we'll need to use Code Editor. We recommend Visual Studio Code or VS Code. What are development folders? For using your text editor, it's important to establish an organized file system. As the number and size of your projects grow, it becomes increasingly important to know where to save new projects and find old projects. Most developers store their projects in an easy-to-find directory. What you might need might be used to calling a folder. Here at Codecademy, we recommend naming this folder as projects. It will store all of your coding projects. However, when you create a new project, no matter how small, you should always make a new folder inside your project's directory. You will find that single-file projects can quickly turn into larger multi-folder projects. Let's make a project. Below are steps you need to follow to create a new folder for all your programming projects. You will also learn how to load a new video project folder into VS Code and make your very first Hello World HTML project. Make a development folder. Navigate to a folder using your file manager or the terminal. Make sure it's a folder you visit regularly and will remember. Create a new folder called projects. Inside the project directory, create a new folder called Hello World. Everything you add to this folder will be part of your Hello World project. Open the VS Code. For the steps, VS Code will need to be downloaded. Then it can either be launched from the desktop icon or by opening a terminal and doing the following. Open your development folder, click the Explorer file on the left-hand side, and click the Open Folder button and choose your development folder. This will launch your file manager. Navigate to the Hello World folder and select Open. This folder will be open in VS Code side pane. At this point, there should not be any contents in the folder. We'll add a file the next time. Add a file. Before you learn how to add files to a project folder, it is important to understand the purpose of file formats. File formats include the file extension or the suffix of a file name, the last 3 to 4 characters in a file name preceded by a period, and describe the type of content the file contains. For example, the HTML file extension is HTML, and it tells the browser and other applications to interpret the contents of the file as an HTML document. Once VS Code loads a project folder, you can add files. The steps below describe how to add files. Don't worry about doing things on your own computer. We'll get there, or get to that next. Okay. In VS Code's Explorer pane, click on the development folder's name. You'll see 4 icons appear to the right of the folder. Click the new file icon, type the file name with the appropriate extension. It is critical that you include the correct file path so programs like linters know how to interpret its contents. Please enter when done. Begin coding. Copy and paste the following. Okay. To decrease the chance of losing unsaved work, save your file often with the autosave feature and track changes with a version control system like Git if you know how to use one. To turn autosave on, click on File, then Autosave. When it's on, you'll see a check mark next to Autosave. File formats and syntax highlighting. Syntax is one of the rule sets that tells us how to create correctly written code. VS Code and other text editors are able to interpret file formats and provide language-specific syntax highlighting. Syntax highlighting is a tool for making code easier to read. Take a look at your index file. The text and tags are different colors. This is how VS Code highlights HTML syntax. With each new language you learn, VS Code will highlight text in a way that makes your code easier to read. This may be different than other text editors and also different than the way your code is highlighted on Codecademy. Optional. Change the color scheme. Don't want to do that. Although VS Code comes with default syntax highlighting, you may want to change the color used. Good color themes will make reading all those lines of code easy on your eyes. Try out low contrast dark themes like Solarized Dark or Dracula Dark. To do this, select color theme from the welcome page when you first open VS Code, or click on the code in the menu bar at the top of your desktop window. Then click on Preferences, followed by Color Theme. You can also search for color themes to install using the Extensions menu. View your HTML file in the browser. At this point, your file is ready to be viewed in a web browser. The following steps should be taken outside of VS Code. Navigate to index.html file in your Hello World folder through your file manager or terminal. Double-click or open index.html. The page should open in your default web browser. Take a second to marvel at your handiwork. You made your first project with VS Code. Wrapping up, congratulations, you successfully used your VS Code text editor to create a website all on your own computer. As you work more with VS Code, you'll get a better sense of how to personalize it to fit your needs. Don't be afraid to experiment, try different things. Go further with VS Code's features if you already feel comfortable with the previous steps. I do. Explore the following features to further customize your development environment. You don't need to use these suggestions to complete the project in Codecademy, but they can help make you more efficient when writing code. They are part of what makes VS Code such a useful editor. All right. Create your first local HTML CSS project. Use the tools in your own computer to start your own HTML CSS project requirements. Text editor. Okay. In this article, we'll cover how to take CSS skills you've learned on Codecademy and use them to create a basic web page built entirely from the tools you have on your computer. Before you proceed, you should already be familiar with the basics of text editors, local files, and directories, all of which are covered elsewhere on Codecademy. We recommend that you watch this explainer video and then follow the instructions below. If you like some optional extra guidance or on real world CSS, watch the second part of the video. So step 1, create a folder structure for your web page. Let's create a folder structure to support your web page. A well-designed folder structure will help you quickly navigate to the HTML or CSS files that contain your code. First, open Finder in Mac or Explorer in Windows. Next, create a folder, also known as a directory, called Dev Project. This folder will contain all of the files for your HTML and CSS project. Open the Dev folder inside. Create the following items: a new file called index, a new folder called resources, index.html file will contain the HTML code for your web page, while the resource folder will contain all of the necessary resources needed by the HTML file, CSS, files, images, etc. Next, open the newly created resources folder. Inside of this folder, create the following: an additional folder named CSS. CSS folder will contain the CSS files needed to style your web page. Finally, open the CSS folder you just created. Inside of this folder, create the following: a new file named index.css. Use your preferred text editor. All right, the index CSS file will contain all of the CSS styling rules that will be applied to your web page. This overall folder structure will help support your workflow as you add files or resources. At a high level, here's what it should look like. Take this screenshot here. Okay. Add content to your web page. Great. With your folder structure, HTML, CSS files are all in the right place. We can add content to the web page. First, open the index file, prefer a text editor. Next, add the required boilerplate HTML code. After you add the boilerplate, feel free to also add the following items: your own title between the title tags, your own content within the body tags. If you need some quick pre-written content, feel free to use the following and modify as you wish. Finally, open the index CSS file and you preferred and add the following pre-written CSS rules to the file. Feel free to modify as you wish. Be sure to save your changes for both files. Step 3, link your HTML file and CSS file. As it turns out, the HTML content you added will not be styled by the CSS rules unless index.html and index.css are linked together in the head section. Link the style sheet to the HTML file. You might be wondering why href attribute is set to .resources to CSS. It's because you must specify exactly where the index CSS file lives within your folders relative to where the index file lives. Otherwise, the two files won't link. If you have trouble linking your HTML and CSS, head to the Codecademy community forum. Again, make sure you save your changes. View your project. Great work. Let's take a look at your web page in the browser. Open your preferred web browser. In the menu bar, click on File and then click on Open File or equivalent. Navigate to your index file and then click Open. Browser should load your web page. What do you see? At this point, feel free to make changes to your HTML and CSS code. Keep in mind that in order to view any changes you make, you'll have to refresh your browser. Review. Congrats. In the short time, you learn how to take what you've been learning on Codecademy and apply it using the tools you have available on your own personal computer. You successfully learned how to create a folder structure to support both your workflow and your web page, add HTML content and CSS styling to respective files, link the HTML and CSS files together, view your web page in a browser, and refresh the browser to view new changes. In general, the 4 points above are a strong starting point for your own developer workflow. As you learn more, you may modify the workflow to fit your specific needs. At this point, feel free to modify the content of the web page or create an entirely new project. All right.